Hello, I'm Eric Holdeman, and this is Disaster Zone, a show about emergencies and disasters that can happen anywhere and at any time. Today's show is with Sergeant Sean Whitcomb, the Public Affairs Director for the City of Seattle's Police Department. Today we're talking about the use of social media by public agencies. This should be an interesting show that helps you understand how social media is being used today to keep citizens better informed. And Sean, we're just going to kick it off, and thank you for being on the show. As we talk, this is something that should come natural to you because I think you've been ahead of the curve, as they say.
It's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you.
All right. So, you didn't start out in a career in the police department and social media. So, what's your background? And how did you get into the public affairs, public information side of things? And then, what tweaked you to get into the Twitter sphere and other areas of social media?
So I went to the University of Washington, and to date myself, I graduated in '94 with a speech communications major. I wanted to go into law enforcement and pursued that, got picked up by SPD in '95.
And we don't use any acronyms on the show. So.
But I'm a cop. Acronyms come naturally, right?
We did the show with a military guy, and we got through it. So, Seattle Police Department.
Seattle Police Department.
Yes.
And I, like any good police officer, started off in patrol. I worked in the beat where I went to university, so up in the University District, did that for 5 years. Came back and worked downtown in 2000 doing liaison work between the police department and King County courts with their drug court program. And then in 2004, I had an opportunity to take a position as a public information officer. So as a spokesperson, one of three, and it was a really good experience. Did that for about 3.5 years. Got promoted to sergeant, went back to patrol, did that for a year downtown at night, which was exciting.
Yes.
And then I had a chance to come back and be the boss, the chief spokesperson of our media response unit. And we've since changed the name to Public Affairs, and we embarked upon the journey that is social media in government, and it's been a good one for us.
And about what year was that when you started that? I remember I was at an event that Glenn Woodbury, who you and I know, hosted, and you guys were just getting into social media, but you were way ahead of everybody. So when was that? That was 2000?
Yeah, so 2008. 2008, I came back and worked in the public affairs office that year. That's the year we launched our blog. We were the second city department to launch one. Bill Schreier, who's absolutely amazing and has been an inspiration to us, was the first. Gil Kurlikowski, who was the police chief, said, there's a few other police departments across the country who've got blogs. I want one here.
Okay.
And we embarked on that, and then the following spring, we jumped on Twitter and Facebook and then started using it in earnest that summer.
Okay, and how's the police department using social media now? I mean, you mentioned Twitter. I mean, are you using Facebook? Are you on Google Plus? Are you on any other Instagram? It keeps replicating, so there's more and more. That'd be an interesting dialogue on how do you choose what to use. But where did you start, and where are you now from using social media?
Like anything else, it's an evolution, and with us, we jumped in with both feet. We wanted to make sure we were using those platforms and producing information and content because the people we serve were on social media. So we were just trying to broadcast our information and put it out to a wider circle of people. We strategically were just trying to produce content. And then as we became comfortable with that, and our department was also looking on sort of a parallel track how we can improve our department communications externally and internally. We actually brought in a consultant through the Seattle Police Foundation to do exactly that. We realized that we were missing some opportunities. And in 2011, we started doing some experimentation. We started doing some things that we'd seen in other cities that were successful. I like to say that we improved on concepts that were being used elsewhere. And so 2011 was really kind of a turning point, and we really reached maturity in 2012 when we brought on a journalist to help out, to be part of our team, to bring a perspective that we didn't have, and that was Jonas Spangenthal-Lee, who previously had worked at The Stranger at Cairo Television and also on his own crime blog, seattlecrime.com.
Okay, I can't remember when that was announced that all that happened. So what I remember is that you guys started tweeting the blog, or not the blog, tweeting the blotter.
Right.
And so how did that start, and then how's that work today?
So with the SPD blotter, that's our blog, where we produce public safety information and just interesting police department news in general. It lived there, and we hoped that people would find it, and we talked about it, and it was, I maybe referenced a few times, but having Twitter and being able to push out blog content via Twitter just by pushing out the links, that's truly why we thought Twitter was great. And also, of course, for that breaking news that happens. We're a big city, there's crimes that happen. We want people to know about them as quickly as possible. So for us, Twitter, two real purposes back in the early days, putting out news alerts and then also letting people know that we had blog content. And that evolved to two-way communication via Twitter, where we basically do community engagement, we answer questions, we give people some traffic control, so to speak, where to go for this, where to go for that, and routing people's questions, answering ones that we certainly can and have the authority to do. And in between, we still put out content via Twitter when we've got a new blog post. So it's really become a lot more robust.
Is the Seattle Police Department blog the center point for it, or is it the web page? Or, where's the center point for the social media?
So part of our reboot, we took our blog, it still lives on seattle.gov/police, but we took it and it's got its own standalone webpage, spdblotter.seattle.gov.
Okay.
And that's where the rest of our social media live. When we went and started doing our two-way communication with Twitter, we always wanted to have that central account, that central department voice, where people know that they have a very good likelihood of getting a human. And also we realized that people were thirsty for information that the department had, but maybe wasn't putting it out in a way that was convenient, that was natural. It all lived on our crime mapping page. So the work was already being done, but we weren't hitting the audience that we wanted to. And thus was born Tweets by Beat, where we took that information that was already being pushed to the crime map. We broke up the city, well, the city's already broken up into 51 different beats. So we created 51 different Twitter accounts. And we took that information that was going on the crime map, and then it would automatically populate in the appropriate section. So if you live in one part of the city and you want to know what's going on just in your neighborhood, because that's what's relevant and important to you, you can. If you work in another part, you can follow that beat too.
So you can just sign up for your own individual geographical area, maybe one adjacent to it or whatever your interest is.
Exactly. And you don't even have to sign up. You can just jump on the website. So if you see a couple of Seattle Police cruisers on your street, bounce there, see what's going on.
Okay. But it can be pushed to you.
Exactly, indeed.
Okay. So, still going back to the blotter piece. So, do you equate the blotter and the blog as the same thing?
That's true. Yeah. They're the same thing for us. Our blog is called the SPD Blotter.
Okay, all right. And is it actually the blotter that's being tweeted, or pieces of it, or how's that work? Because some of it has to be filtered somehow.
So our blotter, we take the article, we hyperlink it, and then push it out on Twitter. So it's all intact for people to read.
Okay. And then, a big issue is, who's actually tweeting. So do you have 3 staff now in your public affairs?
So the office consists of 3 detectives, plus me, plus 2 civilian communication specialists. Typically, tweeting is done by the on-call, if it's overnight or on the weekend, or me. And our in-house journalist, so to speak, Jonah will typically tweet during the daytime as people have questions, concerns. So we've got see, this is the art with social media. We've got a lot of people on Twitter for the central account, but what we've tried to do, and I think we've successfully accomplished it, is we've maintained one voice. So there's this harmony in our office where the people who are using the account are using it in a way that's consistent, and that people who follow us or are looking to us for information, they know what they're going to get.
Yeah. See, I know Washington State Department of Transportation has multiple people tweeting. Now, they have had some variation. I've only read this more so than observe it personally. But they say, you can kind of tell who's using it. But there's this one voice piece. I guess a big question would be, have you had any conversations about other staff, line staff, somebody in the street with immediate knowledge, tweeting, posting a photo, whether maybe it's a supervisor, shift sergeant, or that?
We've certainly talked about it, and I know there's a lot of big city police departments in our country that actually use that model, which we would call a decentralized model for social media. Philadelphia is one. Toronto in Canada does that as well. I believe Dallas is embarking on that. And with us, we've found for a city of our size and a department of our size that having that central voice is really the best fit for us. And to satisfy people's interests in what's going on the street, we've done tweet-alongs, where it's kind of a virtual ride-along and a window into a beat officer's day.
Okay, all right. And big question is, law enforcement is not known as being this wide open, ask me a question, I'll tell you whatever I know type of thing. And because you have crimes and you have to protect the evidence and that aspect, how do the rank and file officers adapt to this use of social media through time? Because let's in the beginning and then now.
Well, I think just like anything else, there was some skepticism, and not everyone started off using social media. I mean, you had your pioneers and your early adopters, and then over time it became a little bit more mainstream.
Now, pioneers are people that sometimes have arrows in their back.
That's
right?
true. That's
and
true.
sellers are the ones
Right.
that come after. And
So there was certainly there were a few question marks, but ultimately the administration supported it and understood the value. You look at any big incident, and you have a need to put information out. Typically, that's done through traditional news. What we're doing is we are supplementing that via our own feed, and you've got this exponential effect, and everyone is on the same page. Everyone's putting out the same or similar information, all geared towards the safety of the general public. An example would be the active shooting situation that we had at Cafe Racer, which was just an epic tragedy. And we had a person who had killed several people, fled to a different part of the city, killed another person, and then fled to yet a different part of the city. It was a citywide manhunt, and we were putting out information as quickly as we could to keep the public safe. Our news partners were doing the same thing, our community partners, the same thing. So everyone is pushing this information out. And when you have an event like that and you see how it works, even people who are skeptics or cynics, they're going to say, okay, I see the public safety value in that. It's no different than driving a patrol car and getting on the PA, the public announcement system, and letting people know something is happening. So for us, this is our PA.
Okay, very good. Well, listen, it's about halfway through. So, folks, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking more about social media. And I'm going to ask Sean about, okay, you got the social media tool, And then you have 700,000 people in town for the Seahawks victory parade, and you want them off the phones, but are we tweeting? We'll find out how they address that. But then also talk about all the objections that some organizations are using not to become engaged with social media. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
In the event of a catastrophe, you need to know what to do to make it through. By preparing now, you and your family will have a better chance of surviving when a catastrophe happens. Here are 3 tips to get you started. Have an emergency plan with meeting places and an out-of-area contact. Prepare a supply kit for your family and pets that includes what you need to survive for 7 to 10 days. And be prepared to help each other. Start now and take the first step to protect the ones you love. For more information, visit makeitthrough.org or find us on Facebook.
Hi, I'm Eric Holdeman, and today's Disaster Zone show is about social media, and our guest today is Sergeant Sean Whitcomb, and we're going to pick up where we left off for the first part of the show. And going to ask you there, Sean, 700,000 people are in downtown Seattle, which I had poo-pooed. I poo-pooed 500,000, but they showed up, real fans. And, so you're a proponent for using social media and getting information out, and then you have this dichotomy of that, there's so many people using their wireless devices, they can't call 911. There was no, fortunately, big emergencies. So how do you balance that in those types of circumstances?
Well, first of all, the 700,000 number was disputed.
Okay.
So, let's just say it was a lot of people.
A lot of people.
A lot of people downtown in one central location. And what we saw there was technology outpacing infrastructure. So everyone had their personal technology on them. They were sharing an experience that hopefully will be repeated soon in our lovely city. But you're tweeting it, you're posting on Facebook, you're taking pictures, you're posting them to Instagram. All that's taking up bandwidth. And when everyone has a smartphone and everyone is participating in this very large conversation, it's going to put a strain on the network. And in this particular case, I think it was a little overwhelmed. So there's that balance. You want to say, by all means, have fun and do those things that you do and experience that type of event the way it should be. But of course, you need to have those channels open in case there is an emergency, in case someone does need to call 911. And my understanding was they could get 911, but there was some other things that they couldn't do that might have caused some public safety impacts.
Okay.
911 isn't always your first call.
Right.
It might need to be, but it isn't always your first
Right.
call. And we wouldn't want anyone to be caught up or delayed.
Okay. Well, listen, people may throw that up as an objection, for instance, but I'm going to run through a series of these that I'm a big proponent for using social media. But I hear these all the time. I'd like to hear what you would say in response to those. This is organizations, a lot of them public, of why they're not using social media or don't believe in it, whatever. So social media is frivolous. There's nothing significant about what it is used for.
I think I've heard that one before. So what I would say is your audience, the people you're serving, your customer base, it doesn't matter if you're for profit, not for profit, private, public, the people who are interested in the service or product you're providing are on social media. So there's a built-in expectation, and you can choose not to be there, you can choose not to engage, but I would say that conversation happened about 3 years ago. And now the conversation that people should be having is, I've got my account, how do I use it effectively? So if you're still back in the, I think it's frivolous, I would say it's going to be hard to stay in business.
Well, okay. Another big one, and there's a survey done that is the one reason why people don't use social media, organizations, emergency management organizations in particular. I don't have the time or dedicated staff to use social media.
So when we started using social media, we actually had experienced a staff cut. And for us, it wasn't a matter of taking on extra work. It was changing the work that we were doing. And it has allowed us to be much more productive. and to engage with a much larger audience than we had previously. So I understand people view that as a stumbling block or a hurdle, and it just truly isn't. People are already doing it on their own time.
It's a different way of performing your job, whatever that is. Instead of writing news releases all day long, you're using social media.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, this is the big one here, because we talked a little bit about this two-way dialogue. Information from the public that comes from social media cannot be depended on for accuracy.
Sometimes. So we get information from the public, and we'll act on it. And maybe there's something to it, maybe not. But is it any different than someone making a call to your 911 center? Is it any different than someone flagging down an employee? And again, like I said, it doesn't matter if it's the police department, fire department, city light, water department, saying that there's an issue. And then, well, how accurate is that? And this is what we do in public service already. We're just getting the same information through a different channel. And our job in public affairs is to route it. And it's the same thing with the private sector. If someone has a customer service issue, then this is another way for them to bring that to the business's attention. And not to plug any one business, but if you've ever been to the McDonald's Twitter account that deals with unhappy customers, it's like just an entire list. And I shudder to think of how many people are saying, I'm sorry your Big Mac wasn't cooked to your satisfaction. But it's that type of engagement, and it makes the customer feel truly valued.
And there is this thing called crowdsourcing, where multiple reports from individuals seeing the same thing can correct what was observed and reported also. I don't know if you've seen that happen.
And you look at what happened in Boston with their marathon attack, and for a long time they're dealing with that mythology of the person on the roof had to do with the attack, and it was a person that was being looked for. And the Boston Police Department did just a tremendous job getting information out quickly and shutting down rumors when rumors sprouted up. So they were part of that conversation, which was a very large conversation just across our country. Everyone was just watching that very intently.
Right. And what about, this is another objection, that there would be individuals who would deliberately give false information, give erroneous things, try and send you off in a wild goose chase or whatever. That's another reason not to use it.
It's the same thing that's been going on forever. It's just coming in through a different channel. So that behavior is not new. It's predictable, and we experience it in our business, as it were. So it's just the same thing happening in a slightly different way. It's not an excuse not to engage in that communication strategy, which is social media.
Okay. Well, this next one we kind of talked about here, and again, I've had within the last month someone spoke to this issue, that social media can't be depended upon during an emergency, and we were talking about in a disaster, because the communication systems will be overwhelmed. So it's not a valuable tool because systems won't work anyway.
I can think of several occasions that I would consider pretty dire. Cafe Racer, we had an active shooter at one of our community centers in the city, where the shooter was a parks employee and had the key to every community center across the city. We dealt with 2 Maydays that were memorable, let's just say that. But there were a lot of people, there were a lot of crimes happening. People wanted information, people were impacted because they worked downtown. And the system didn't crash, everything worked out. And that's, there's going to be that one time where it crashes and someone's going to say, well, if only it hadn't crashed, people would have received the public safety information they needed. Well, you know what? We don't limit ourselves just to using social media. It's a tactic. It's an option that we have to use, and we exercise that option regularly, but we've got other tools at our disposal. And of course, this is what you want. You want an assortment, a menu of
redundant
options.
system of systems.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, one of the things we talked about earlier, and you didn't get a chance to answer, was besides Twitter, which we've talked about quite a bit here, what other systems are you using? And we got maybe like 3.5 minutes left here.
Right. So I did get on a tangent. We use Twitter. Twitter's where news happens. We use it for alerts. We use it for public safety information. And by the way, we've got new content on the blog. Facebook we use. The strategy behind Facebook for us is it's a place where we put a lot of stories. If there's something that happens in the news about us or about law enforcement in general, we'll put it there. It's primary audience, family, friends of Seattle Police, people who are interested in Seattle Police, but it doesn't have really that edge that our Twitter account does. Right. We just launched Tumblr. Tumblr for us is a place where we put a lot of different fun, interesting, unique things that might not live on our blog. SPD Blotter is really a news site for the public, for our partners in the news media, for the community blogs. So that's where the news lives. Tumblr is a separate blog. It's weird and unusual facts about the police department.
All right. Now, one of the challenges people have, if you can address this quickly, is there's Google Plus, there's Instagram, and there's others new ones popping up. How do you choose which ones you're going to use?
You don't have to use everything, and there are people who do. And then by using so many different things, they're not really using all of them effectively. For us, we chose the ones that were important in our city. We chose the ones that we had a large audience with. And certainly, if any one of them goes the way of MySpace, we are flexible enough to move on to a new platform and utilize it. So these are the items we use now as emerging ones come out, like Vine. I love Vine, and I can envision us using a lot more Vine in the future. But until we get there, we're using the ones that we have, and we're just trying to maximize the impact.
So kind of a wrap-up question, we got about a minute left, is this is not a static thing, as you just talked about. What do you think is in the future, perhaps that you're not publicly announcing today that you're running for president, but I mean, what do you think is coming in social media that the police department might use? Very briefly.
I would say more on Tumblr. We just launched it this fall, and more Vine. More Vine from crime scenes.
And what does Vine do?
Vine is a very short video. It's about 6.5 seconds. Right. And it's easy for us to throw that up on Twitter. Okay.
Well, I think people of Seattle, and really the region, because everybody can follow this, are fortunate that Seattle PD is on the cutting edge of this. I do, and that's great to see the guy making it happen here, and I appreciate you being on the show with us, Sean. The Disaster Zone coffee mug is yours to take. It's for all our guests up here on the show, and thanks much for what you're doing. I look forward to hearing more in the future from you, and I'm going to be talking to you about First to See myself.
Very good.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Eric.
And for you folks at home, this brings us to the end of our show for today. Thanks for tuning in, learning more about what you and others can do to become better prepared for disasters, like using social media. And remember, if you're going to get prepared, today is a good day to start. Have a great day, and tune in again soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.